Thomas Reed looked down at the city from his glass penthouse on the 50th floor. The lights below looked like little stars. He held a glass of expensive whiskey that cost more than what most people earned in a day. At 35, Thomas had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. His phone buzzed again. Another message from his assistant about tomorrow's big meeting. Thomas sighed. Being the boss of his family's huge investment company meant he was never truly free, even at 11 p.m. on a Friday. Another boring weekend, he said to himself. His voice echoed in the empty apartment. The place was big and beautiful, with art on the walls that cost millions. But it felt cold. No one was there to hear him. Thomas walked to his bedroom, where his suit for tomorrow's charity event was laid out. The tag still hung from the sleeve. $12,000. He would wear it once, maybe twice, then forget about it. That's how things worked in his world. Use things, then throw them away when you get bored. Sometimes he felt like people did the same with relationships. He thought about his last girlfriend, Sophia. She had left him 3 months ago, saying he cared more about work than about her. She was right. Thomas didn't know how to care deeply about anyone. His parents had taught him that success and money mattered most. Feelings were for weak people. The charity event tomorrow was for helping homeless people. Thomas laughed a little. He was giving money to people he had never met and never would meet. His donation would make him look good to other rich people. That was all. His phone rang. It was his mother. "Thomas, darling," she said in her perfect, practiced voice. "I just wanted to remind you about the Johnson family at the event tomorrow. Their daughter Rebecca would be perfect for you. Harvard graduate, comes from good money." "Mom, I'm not looking for a relationship right now," Thomas said, feeling tired. "Nonsense. You're 35. It's time you settled down with someone appropriate and gave us grandchildren. The Reed family name must continue." Thomas looked at his reflection in the window. His expensive haircut, his perfect white teeth, his tired eyes. Who was this man staring back at him? "I'll think about it," he told his mother, knowing it was easier than arguing. After hanging up, Thomas opened his laptop. His email showed hundreds of messages. Work problems, meeting requests, people wanting money for their causes. Nothing personal. No one asking how he was really doing. Thomas opened a new tab and typed, "What makes people happy?" The search results came up, but they all seemed fake and empty. Buy this, try that, 10 steps to happiness. None of it seemed real. He closed the laptop and walked to his wall of windows again. Down below, people were living their lives. Regular people with regular jobs and regular problems. Sometimes he wondered what that would be like. To worry about rent instead of which million-dollar property to buy next. To have real friends instead of people who wanted something from him. His cleaning lady had said something interesting last week. She was talking about her son's birthday party. A simple backyard event with homemade cake. "It's not fancy," she had said, "but there's so much love there. That's what matters most." Love. Thomas couldn't remember the last time he had felt loved, or loved someone else. Not the love his parents talked about. The kind that came with conditions and expectations. Real love. Thomas finished his whiskey and made a decision. Something had to change. He couldn't keep living this empty life filled with things but no meaning. Tomorrow, after the charity event, he would look for something real. He didn't know what that meant, but for the first time in years, he felt a spark of something new. Hope. Maya Johnson woke up at 5:30 a.m. as the sun was just starting to peek through her thin curtains. Her alarm clock buzzed loudly, and she quickly turned it off so it wouldn't wake her neighbors. The walls in her small apartment were very thin. She stretched and looked around her tiny bedroom. It wasn't much, but it was hers. A few photos hung on the walls, smiling faces of the teens she worked with at the community center. Those pictures made her smile every morning, no matter how tired she was. Maya got ready quickly. She had to be at the coffee shop by 6:30 for her morning shift. After a quick shower in the bathroom she shared with the apartment next door, She dressed in her uniform, black pants and a green shirt with the coffee shop logo. She ate a simple breakfast of toast and an apple, then grabbed her bag and headed out. The city looked different in the early morning. Quiet, peaceful. Some homeless people were still sleeping in doorways. Maya knew many of them by name. She stopped to leave a sandwich next to an old man named Joe who had lost his job 3 years ago. "Morning, Joe," she whispered, not wanting to wake him. She would check on him later. At the coffee shop, Maya tied her apron and began the morning rush. For the next 6 hours, she made drinks, smiled at grumpy customers, and tried to bring a little kindness to everyone's day. "A little extra whipped cream today, Mr. Garcia. You look like you could use it," she said to one of her regular customers, a tired teacher from the local school. He smiled for the first time that morning. "You always know, Maya." "Thank you." By 1 p.m., her shift was over. Maya's feet hurt, but she had no time to rest. Her next job started at 2 p.m. The community center where she worked with homeless and at-risk teens. This job paid even less than the coffee shop, but it was what kept her going. Maya walked the 15 blocks to save bus fare. As she walked, she called her friend Lisa. "Hey, did you send in that grant application?" Maya asked. The community center needed money for a new program to help teens learn job skills. "I did, but don't get your hopes up," Lisa said. "Those big companies hardly ever give money to small places like ours." "We have to try," Maya said firmly. "These kids deserve a chance." At the community center, a group of teenagers were waiting for her. Some looked angry, others looked sad, but all of them needed someone who cared. "Miss Maya," called out Darnell, a 14-year-old whose mother was fighting addiction. "I got a B on my math test." Maya gave him a high five. "That's amazing. I knew all that studying would pay off." For the next 5 hours, Maya helped with homework, listened to problems, broke up one fight, and made sure everyone got something to eat. The center couldn't afford much, just sandwiches and fruit. But no one went hungry. By 7 p.m., Maya was exhausted. Her second job was done, but her day wasn't over. She still had to plan tomorrow's activities and check on 3 teens who hadn't shown up today. As she walked home in the dark, Maya passed by the fancy part of the city. Tall glass buildings reached to the sky. People in expensive clothes walked out of restaurants where one meal cost more than Maya made in a day. Sometimes she wondered what it would be like to live without worrying about money, to not count every dollar, to be able to help the kids at the center with more than just kind words and time. Her phone buzzed with a text from the center's director. "Grant denied again. We need to think of something else, or we might have to close the teen program." Maya felt her heart sink. The kids needed this program. She needed this program. There had to be a way to keep it going. As she looked up at the gleaming penthouse windows far above, Maya had no idea that her life was about to change completely. No idea that someone up there was just as lost as the teens she helped every day, but in a completely different way. Thomas stood in the waiting room of the TV studio, checking his expensive watch every few minutes. His assistant had brought him the offer 3 weeks ago, a spot on a new reality show called Marriage Experiment. At first, he had laughed at the idea. Him on a reality show. But his company's marketing team said it would be good publicity, a way to show that the Reed investment firm cared about regular people. "Mr. Reed." A young woman with a clipboard and a headset appeared. "They're ready for you now." The producer of the show, a man named Rick with slicked back hair and a too bright smile, shook Thomas's hand eagerly. "This is going to be huge," Rick said. "We pair people from completely different worlds and have them live as a married couple for 6 months. The public eats this stuff up." Thomas nodded, already bored. "And who will I be paired with?" "Another rich person with a different job." Rick's smile grew wider. "Actually, we found someone completely different from you. Someone from the streets, you might say." Across town, Maya sat nervously in another waiting room. She hadn't planned to try out for a TV show, but when she heard about the payment, $100,000 for 6 months, she couldn't say no. That kind of money could save the teen program at the community center. Miss Johnson, a woman in a sharp business suit, appeared. "Come with me, please." Maya followed her into a room where cameras were already set up. A man sat behind a desk, looking at her file. "So, Maya," he said without looking up, "you work at a coffee shop and a community center for troubled youth." "They're not troubled," Maya corrected him. "They're just kids who haven't had the same chances as others." The man finally looked up and smiled. "Perfect. That's exactly the kind of fire we want. The viewers will love you." He explained the show to her, living with a stranger from a different background, pretending to be married, all while cameras followed them everywhere. It sounded crazy, but Maya kept thinking of the money, of what it could do for the kids. "And who would I be paired with?" she asked. "Someone who can offer you a glimpse into a very different world," the man said mysteriously. 2 weeks later, Thomas stood nervously in front of an apartment building he would never normally enter. It wasn't in a bad area of town, but it certainly wasn't where people of his status lived. The cameras were already rolling, capturing his reaction. "Remember," Rick said from behind the camera, "act natural. This is the first time you'll meet your new spouse for the next 6 months." Thomas straightened his tie and tried to look confident. The door opened, and Rick gestured for him to go inside. The apartment was simple but clean. Standing in the living room was a young woman in jeans and a simple blue shirt. She looked as nervous as he felt. "Thomas Reed," Rick said from behind the camera. "Meet Maya Johnson, your wife for the next 6 months." Thomas looked at Maya with surprise. She was pretty in a natural way, with no makeup and curly hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the women he usually dated. Maya stared at Thomas in his perfect suit that probably cost more than her rent. His watch alone could fund the community center for months. He looked exactly like the type of rich person who denied their grant applications without a second thought. "Hello," Thomas said, extending his hand formally. "Hi," Maya replied, shaking it briefly. Rick clapped his hands excitedly. "Perfect. The wealthy businessman and the street-smart social worker. America is going to love watching you two figure out how to live together." Thomas and Maya looked at each other again, both thinking the same thing. What have I gotten myself into? "The rules are simple," Rick continued. "You'll live together in this apartment. Thomas, you can bring some of your personal items, but not your credit cards or access to your usual luxuries. Maya, you'll continue your jobs, but you'll need to include Thomas in your daily life. You'll share everything: meals, chores, social activities, just like a real married couple." As the cameras continued rolling, Thomas looked around the small apartment that would be his home for 6 months. No personal chef, no cleaning service, no driver. Maya watched Thomas's expression and could already tell he was regretting his decision. This was going to be a very long 6 months. Little did they know that this experiment would change both their lives forever. The first week of living together was harder than either Thomas or Maya had expected. The cameras followed them everywhere, catching every awkward moment and every argument. And there were many arguments. On the very first morning, Thomas woke up and immediately reached for his phone to call his assistant. "I need my usual breakfast delivered," he said loudly, "and find out where the nearest gym with private training sessions is located." Maya, who was already up and making coffee in the small kitchen, rolled her eyes. "There's cereal in the cupboard, and the park 2 blocks away has free exercise equipment." Thomas looked at her like she had suggested he eat dirt. "I don't eat cereal. It's full of sugar and carbs, and I don't exercise in public parks." "Well, your fancy breakfast isn't part of our food budget," Maya said firmly. "And the show rules say you have to live on our shared money, not your personal fortune." Thomas frowned but hung up the phone. The camera zoomed in on his annoyed face. This would make good TV. By the third day, the small apartment felt even smaller. Thomas had brought too many clothes, and they were spilling out of the tiny closet he shared with Maya. His expensive suits hung next to her simple work clothes. "Why do you need 15 different shirts?" Maya asked as she tried to find space for her own things. "No one needs this many clothes. Image is important in my world," Thomas replied. "You wouldn't understand." Maya felt her temper rising. "What I understand is that while you spend thousands on clothes you barely wear, the kids at my center don't have decent winter coats. The cameras love these moments of tension." The producer, Rick, even tried to create more problems by suggesting topics they should discuss. "Maybe talk about money management," he said one day. "That should be interesting." It was. Thomas couldn't believe how carefully Maya tracked every dollar, writing down even small purchases in a notebook. "This is a waste of time," he said. "Just use a credit card and pay it off at the end of the month." "Not everyone has that option," Maya snapped. "Some of us have to watch every penny." Thomas shook his head. "That's because you choose to work low-paying jobs. You could get better work if you tried." The hurt on Maya's face was real, and even Thomas knew he had gone too far. The cameras caught it all. By the end of the first week, they had established an uneasy routine. Thomas took over the small desk in the corner for his work calls, speaking loudly about million-dollar deals, while Maya tried to plan activities for the teens at her center. She worked her coffee shop shifts in the morning and went to the community center in the afternoons, leaving Thomas alone to figure out how regular people lived. "The washing machine is broken," he told her when she got home on Friday. "No, it's not," Maya said. "You just don't know how to use it. Didn't you ever do your own laundry?" Thomas looked embarrassed. "I have a service for that." Maya showed him how to sort clothes and use the right amount of soap. The cameras filmed as Thomas, still in his expensive shirt and pants, kneeled on the floor and studied the washing machine like it was a complicated puzzle. "You're not going to die from learning to wash your own clothes," Maya teased him. For the first time that week, Thomas smiled a little. "I might. My mother would certainly think so." That small moment of shared humor didn't last long. At dinner, Thomas complained about the simple pasta Maya had made. "This has no flavor," he said. "We should order food from Antonio's. They make proper Italian cuisine." "Antonio's costs more for one meal than our entire food budget for 3 days," Maya pointed out. "This is how regular people eat." Thomas pushed his plate away. "Then regular people have my sympathy." Maya stood up angrily. "You know what? I have to be at the center early tomorrow for a special program. You can make your own breakfast. Maybe you'll learn something about how the other half lives." As she walked away, the cameras focused on Thomas's face. For a moment, behind the annoyance, there was something else. Shame, perhaps, or the beginning of understanding that his normal life was nothing like normal for most people. The next day, Thomas woke up to an empty apartment. Maya had already left for her special program at the community center. He made himself a cup of coffee, burning his fingers on the old coffee maker. He wasn't used to doing simple things for himself. Thomas looked at the note Maya had left on the fridge. Center address: 145 Westbrook Street. Come by at 2 p.m. if you want to see what I actually do all day. He almost didn't go. What would he do at a community center for troubled teens? But the cameras were following him, and staying alone in the small apartment all day seemed worse. Plus, the show producers had been clear. He needed to experience Maya's world just as she was experiencing his. At 2 p.m. sharp, Thomas arrived at the community center. It was an old building with peeling paint and a small sign out front. He was wearing one of his less expensive suits, but he still looked completely out of place. Inside, the center was noisy with teenagers talking, laughing, and arguing. Some were playing basketball on a small court. Others were doing homework at worn tables. A few were just sitting alone, looking sad or angry. Maya spotted Thomas and walked over, surprise on her face. She clearly hadn't expected him to show up. "You came," she said. "The apartment was boring," Thomas replied, not wanting to admit he was curious. Maya introduced him to her boss, Lisa, and a few of the teens who came up to see who the man in the fancy suit was. Most of the kids looked at Thomas with suspicion. He didn't belong here, and they knew it. "What do you do?" asked a tall boy named Marcus. "I run an investment firm," Thomas answered. The boy looked unimpressed. "So you just play with money all day?" Thomas started to get annoyed, but then he saw Maya watching him. He took a deep breath. "It's a bit more complicated than that," he said. "But yes, I help people with money, like people here." Another teen asked. Thomas looked around at the worn-out building, the old books, the second-hand sports equipment. "No," he admitted, "not usually people like this." There was an awkward silence. Then Marcus pointed to the basketball court. "Bet you can't play," he challenged Thomas. Thomas looked at the court, then at his expensive shoes and suit. The cameras were rolling, catching every moment of his discomfort. "Actually," he said, taking off his jacket, "I played in college." Nobody believed him until Thomas stepped onto the court. He hadn't played in years, but some skills don't go away. He made 3 baskets in a row. The team started to watch with interest. Marcus tried to block Thomas, but Thomas faked left and went right, scoring again. Soon, there was a real game happening. Thomas had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. He was sweating and laughing. The teens stopped seeing him as just a rich guy and started seeing him as a person. During a break, Thomas sat on a bench, breathing hard. A quiet boy named Jamal sat next to him. "Why'd you come here today?" Jamal asked. "You don't belong here." Thomas thought about it. "I don't know," he admitted. "The show made me, I guess." "My dad left when I was 6, Jamal said suddenly. "He said he didn't belong with us either." Thomas didn't know what to say. In his world, people didn't share personal pain like this. "That must have been hard," he finally said. Jamal nodded. "Miss Maya helps us talk about stuff like that. She says everyone has pain, even rich people." Thomas looked across the room where Maya was helping a girl with homework. For the first time, he saw beyond her simple clothes and direct manner. He saw someone who truly cared about these kids. "She's right," Thomas said quietly. "Everyone has pain." When it was time to leave, Maya found Thomas sitting with a group of teens, listening to their stories about school and home. He wasn't checking his phone or looking bored. He was really listening. On the way back to the apartment, with the cameras still following them, Maya said, "You surprised me today." Thomas smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "I surprised myself." That night, when Maya started making dinner, Thomas stepped into the kitchen. "Can I help?" he asked. Maya handed him a knife and some vegetables to cut. It was a small step, but it was a beginning. As weeks passed, something strange happened in the apartment. The arguments became less frequent. Thomas stopped complaining about the small shower and the lack of fancy food. Maya stopped rolling her eyes when Thomas talked about his work. The cameras were still there, but Thomas and Maya started to forget about them sometimes. One morning, Thomas was making coffee when Maya came into the kitchen. "You're up early," she said, surprised. Usually Thomas slept late, used to his old life of flexible work hours. "I have an idea," Thomas said, "but I need your help." They sat at the small kitchen table as Thomas explained. He wanted to help the community center get more money, not just a small donation, but real funding that could fix the building and buy new equipment. "I know people with money," he said. "Rich people who want to look good by giving to charity, but they need to see why the center matters." Maya looked doubtful. "We've tried getting grants before. Rich people don't care about our kids." "They would if they met them," Thomas insisted, "if they saw what I saw." Together, they made a plan. Thomas would host a special dinner for his wealthy friends and business contacts, but instead of holding it at an expensive restaurant, they would have it at the community center. The teens would help serve food and tell their stories. "It's crazy enough to work," Maya admitted. The next few days were busy. Thomas called in favors from old contacts, while Maya worked with the teens to prepare. The cameras followed them everywhere, capturing their new partnership. "You need to teach me about finance stuff," Maya told Thomas one evening, as they sat with papers spread across the table. "If we're asking for big money, I need to sound like I know what I'm talking about." Thomas smiled. "And you need to teach me how to talk to the kids without sounding like a rich jerk." For the first time, they both laughed together. A real laugh without any anger behind it. The producers of the show were thrilled with this new development. "This is gold," Rick told his camera crew. "The Iceman is melting." On a Saturday, Thomas took Maya to meet his parents. It wasn't part of the show's plan, but Thomas insisted it was important for his fundraising idea. His parents lived in a mansion with a gate and security guards. Maya had never seen a private home so big. "Remember, they're just people," Thomas told her as they walked up to the front door. But even he seemed nervous. His parents were cold at first. Thomas's mother looked at Maya's simple dress with disapproval. His father asked questions about her education and background that made Maya feel small. "And what exactly do you do at this center?" his mother asked. Maya took a deep breath. "I help kids who haven't had the chances your son had. Kids who are smart and talented, but don't have parents to buy them everything they need." Thomas's parents looked shocked at her direct answer. Thomas smiled, proud of Maya's courage. "That's why we're here," Thomas said. "The center needs sponsors for a new program. I thought Father might want to be the first to donate." His father raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you care about charity, Thomas? Real charity, not those fancy galas you attend." "Since I met people who actually need help, not just talk about it," Thomas answered. The drive back to the apartment was quiet. Maya finally asked, "Do you think they'll help?" "I don't know," Thomas admitted. "But for the first time, I didn't care what they thought of me." "That's because of you, Maya." Maya looked at him with surprise. "What do you mean?" "You're not impressed by money or status. You judge people by how they treat others. I've never known anyone like that." That night, after the cameras stopped filming, Thomas and Maya stayed up late talking. He told her about growing up with cold, demanding parents. She told him about the foster homes she had lived in. Some good, some terrible. "How did you stay so kind?" Thomas asked. "After everything you went through." Maya thought about it. "Someone was kind to me when I needed it most. A teacher who believed in me. I decided to be that person for someone else." Thomas looked at Maya differently that night. Not as the poor social worker the show had paired him with, but as someone he could learn from. Someone who might even become a friend. The fundraising dinner at the community center was only 2 days away. Thomas and Maya had been working hard to make everything perfect. The teens were excited to help, and even the show's producers were impressed by how well Thomas and Maya now worked together. But on Wednesday morning, Maya got a call that changed everything. "Miss Maya." It was Lisa, her boss at the center. "Jamal didn't come in yesterday or today. His grandmother called. She hasn't seen him since Tuesday morning when he left for school." Maya's face went white. Jamal, the quiet boy who had talked to Thomas about his father leaving. Jamal, who had finally started to trust people again. "I'll be right there," Maya said, already grabbing her coat. Thomas was on a work call but saw Maya's worried face. He covered the phone. "What's wrong?" "Jamal is missing," Maya said. "I have to go." Thomas nodded and surprised her by saying, "I'll come too. Just give me 5 minutes." At the center, people were gathering to help search. Jamal's grandmother, a tiny woman with wise eyes and a worried face, was talking to the police. "He's a good boy," she kept saying. "He doesn't run away or get in trouble." The police officer looked bored. "Ma'am, teenagers run away all the time. He'll probably come back when he gets hungry." Thomas watched Maya's face get red with anger. Before she could say something that might make the police officer less willing to help, Thomas stepped forward. "Officer," he said in his business voice, the one he used for important meetings. "I'm Thomas Reed of Reed Investments." The officer stood up straighter. Everyone in the city knew the Reed name. "Sir, can I help you?" "This boy is important to us," Thomas said. "I want a real search, not just a note in your files. I want every available officer looking for him." The officer looked confused. "Sir, with all respect, we have limited resources for runaway cases." Thomas pulled out his phone. "Then I'll call the police commissioner. He's a close friend of my father's." Suddenly, the search for Jamal became a top priority. The cameras from the reality show captured it all. Thomas making calls, Maya organizing the teens and community members into search groups, the two of them working together perfectly. "Why are you doing this?" Maya asked Thomas during a quick break. "You barely know Jamal." Thomas thought about it. "Because he matters to you, and because every kid should know someone will look for them if they disappear." For 3 days, they searched. Thomas used his money and connections to print flyers, hire private detectives, and even get local news coverage. Maya used her knowledge of the neighborhood and the places troubled teens might go. They barely slept, grabbing quick naps in the apartment before heading back out to search. On the 3rd day, a tip came in. Someone had seen a boy who looked like Jamal near an abandoned building across town. Thomas and Maya went there right away, with police and camera crews following. The building was old and dangerous, with broken floors and falling ceilings. The police wanted to wait for backup, but Maya wouldn't hear of it. "He could be hurt in there," she said, already climbing over the fence. Thomas followed without hesitation. Inside, they called Jamal's name, searching each dark room carefully. Finally, in a small room on the 3rd floor, they found him. He was curled up in a corner, cold and hungry but alive. "Jamal," Maya said softly, kneeling beside him. "We've been so worried." The boy looked up with tears in his eyes. "No one ever looked for me before." Thomas felt something in his chest tighten. He remembered feeling the same way as a child, not missing physically, but emotionally, wondering if his parents would notice if he disappeared. "We'll always look for you," Thomas said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Later, when Jamal was safe at the hospital getting checked out, they learned the truth. His father had suddenly returned after years away, demanding Jamal come live with him. Jamal had been hiding from him, afraid and confused. "What can we do?" Maya asked, knowing Jamal's grandmother had little money for lawyers. Thomas put his hand on her shoulder. "Leave that to me. I know some very good family lawyers who owe me favors." That night, exhausted but relieved, Thomas and Maya returned to their apartment. The cameras had captured their whole adventure, their worry, their teamwork, their relief when Jamal was found. "Thank you," Maya said quietly as they sat on the couch together. Thomas looked at her, really looked at her. Her eyes were tired but kind. Her hands, rough from work, had been so gentle with Jamal. "No," he said. "Thank you for showing me what really matters." Without thinking, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. The show about Thomas and Maya was now the most watched reality program in the country. People everywhere were talking about how the rich businessman and the caring social worker had come together to find Jamal. The episode showing their 3-day search had millions of viewers. Thomas's phone rang constantly with calls from old friends and business partners. "You're a hero now," his assistant told him. "Everyone wants to donate to your community center project." Thomas smiled at the words, "your community center." 3 months ago, he would have laughed at the idea of caring about a place like that. Now it felt important, maybe the most important thing he had ever done. The fundraising dinner, which had been delayed because of Jamal's disappearance, was now going to be much bigger. So many people wanted to come that they had to move it to a hotel ballroom instead of the small center. "I don't know about this," Maya said as they looked at the growing guest list. "These fancy people won't understand our kids." "They will," Thomas promised, "because the kids will be there to tell their own stories. And you'll be there too." The night of the dinner arrived. Maya wore a simple black dress, that Lisa had helped her pick out. When she walked into the living room, Thomas stopped talking mid-sentence to his assistant on the phone. "You look beautiful," he said after hanging up. Maya blushed. "It's just a dress." At the hotel, the teens from the center were nervous but excited. They wore their best clothes and practiced what they would say to the rich guests. Jamal was there too, safe now from his father thanks to the legal help Thomas had arranged. As guests arrived in expensive cars and designer clothes, the cameras filmed everything for the show. Thomas stood at the door, greeting people he had known his whole life. Bank presidents, company owners, old family friends, but now he introduced them to Maya with pride in his voice. During dinner, the teens went table to table, telling their stories. Thomas watched as his wealthy friends, who normally only talked about money and status, listened with real interest. Some had tears in their eyes. When it was time for speeches, Thomas walked to the front of the room. The cameras zoomed in on his face. "A few months ago," he began, "I thought I knew what mattered in life. Money, power, success. Then I met Maya and the amazing kids at her community center." He looked at Maya, sitting at the front table. "These past 3 months have taught me that we're all connected. What happens to these teens affects all of us. When we let them fall through the cracks, we all lose. When we help them succeed, we all win." The room was completely quiet. "Tonight, I'm not asking for small donations. I'm asking for real change. My company is creating a new fund that will provide college scholarships for every teen at the center. We're also buying a new building that will offer job training, housing help, and more." People in the room began to applaud. "But that's not enough," Thomas continued. "Each of you has the power to make a difference. These kids don't need your pity. They need your belief in them. They need chances like the ones I had." By the end of the night, more money had been raised than Maya had ever dreamed possible. The center would now be able to help hundreds more teens. Thomas's wealthy friends had signed up to be mentors, offering internships and job opportunities. As they rode home in Thomas's car, Maya was quiet. "What's wrong?" Thomas asked. "Isn't this what you wanted?" "It's amazing," Maya said. "But the show ends next week. Then what happens?" Thomas hadn't thought about it. For months, his life had been about the show, about living with Maya, about helping the center. What would happen when the cameras left and he went back to his penthouse? When Maya went back to her small apartment? "I don't know," he admitted. "But something has changed, Maya. I've changed." Maya looked out the window. "People like us don't normally stay in each other's lives. Your world and my world are too different." Thomas wanted to tell her she was wrong, that they could make it work. But the truth was, he didn't know. His parents expected him to marry someone from their social circle. His friends wouldn't understand why he cared about Maya and her teens. "Let's just enjoy the time we have left," Maya said softly. But Thomas couldn't stop thinking about what would happen when the experiment ended. He had found something real with Maya, something that all his money couldn't buy. Was he really going to let it go? The last day of filming came too quickly. 6 months had passed since Thomas and Maya first met in that small apartment. The crew was packing up cameras and equipment while Thomas and Maya sat at the kitchen table, not knowing what to say. "So, what happens now?" Rick, the producer, asked with a big smile. "The audience wants to know if you two will stay together or go your separate ways." Thomas looked at Maya. They had talked late into the night, trying to figure out what came next. Could a wealthy businessman and a community center worker really build a life together? Or was this just a television experiment that was now over? "We need some time," Thomas told Rick, "away from the cameras, to figure things out on our own." Rick looked disappointed, but nodded. "We'll do a follow-up show in 3 months. The audience will be waiting." When the last camera was gone, the apartment felt strangely empty. Thomas and Maya looked at each other. "I guess I should pack my things," Thomas said. His penthouse was waiting for him, cleaned and ready. Maya nodded, her eyes sad. "And I should go back to my place." They agreed to take 3 months apart to think about what they really wanted. The show had created a bubble around them, not the real world. They needed to know if their feelings were real or just part of the experiment. The first week apart was the hardest. Thomas returned to his penthouse, but the huge rooms felt cold and empty. He missed Maya's laugh, the smell of her simple cooking, even her lectures about saving money. His expensive restaurants and business meetings seemed fake and meaningless now. Maya went back to her small apartment and her 2 jobs. But she kept thinking about Thomas, not his money, but his smile when he played basketball with the teens, his determination when they searched for Jamal, his growing kindness. Thomas's parents invited him to dinner with the daughter of a business partner. The woman was beautiful, educated, and from their social circle. But all Thomas could think was that she had never had to fight for anything in her life. She had never known real struggle like Maya had. Maya was offered a full-time position as the director of the new community center that Thomas's money had helped create. The salary was good, better than she had ever earned. But she wondered if taking it meant she would always be accepting Thomas's charity rather than being his equal. 2 months after the show ended, the new community center was ready to open. Thomas had been overseeing the project but had respected Maya's wish for space. He made sure she was hired as director because she was the best person for the job, not because of their relationship. On opening day, Thomas stood nervously at the back of the crowd. He hadn't told Maya he was coming. He watched as she cut the ribbon and gave a speech about how the center would help hundreds of teens find better futures. When the ceremony was over, their eyes met across the room. Maya walked over slowly. "You came," she said. "I wouldn't miss it," Thomas replied. "You look happy." "I am. This center is everything I dreamed of." She paused, but something's still missing. Thomas took a deep breath. "I sold my penthouse," he said, "and I've changed my company. We now have a rule that half of our investments must help communities like this one." Maya looked surprised. "You did that for me?" Thomas shook his head. "No, I did it because of you, but for me. For the person I want to be." He took her hand. "I don't want to go back to my old life, Maya. These past 2 months without you showed me that. Money means nothing if you don't use it to help others. Status means nothing compared to having someone who truly knows you." Maya squeezed his hand. "I was afraid we were too different, that your world would pull you back." "My world has changed," Thomas said, "because I've changed. The question is, do you think there's room in your world for me?" Maya smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "I think we can build a new world together." Behind them, the teens from the center watched with big smiles. Jamal gave a thumbs up. The community had brought Thomas and Maya together, and now they would build something even stronger together. 3 months later, when the follow-up show aired, viewers saw Thomas and Maya working side by side at the center. They had found an apartment halfway between Thomas's business district and Maya's community center. It wasn't a penthouse or a tiny place, but something in between that felt right for both of them. What had started as an experiment for television had become something real. 2 people from completely different worlds had proven that understanding, respect, and love could bridge any gap. Their marriage experiment hadn't ended with the show. In many ways, their real life together was just beginning.